Hey there, and welcome to another video in the series of the lab environments in the az140 course. In this lab, we are going to run lab 201, which is the lab where we are going to create a host pool and some session hosts using the Azure Virtual Desktop environment. So in order to get this lab started, you will first have to be running the labs that prepare the environment of the Azure Virtual Desktop environment. Now, we've done that in earlier sessions in this series. Now, before we can run this lab, you will have to have run those other labs. But also important is that the virtual machines that we have created earlier are also running. As you might remember from the other sessions, one virtual machine, the domain controller virtual machine, is running an ADatum domain, and the client virtual machine is a Windows 10 or Windows 11 machine that we're going to use for some work, making sure that we have these that we have access to everything we want. Another part that we already created earlier in one of those other labs is we created a Bastion host that would allow us to, well, work with the virtual machine we have inside the Azure environment. So that is what we need in order to get started. Now let's dive into the lab 201 deploy host pools and session hosts with the Azure portal. Now, let me just quickly check whether or not my virtual machines are running, and they seem to be running. So let's get started. In this first exercise, we are going to implement an Azure Virtual Desktop environment in a Microsoft Entra domain, in other words, Active Directory Domain Services, where we do some preparations. We will deploy an Azure Virtual Desktop host pool. We're going to manage some of the hosts inside the host pool. We will be creating some application groups, and we're going to configure the Azure Virtual Desktop workspace. So in this example, what we need to do, it wants us to start diving into the Azure portal, and we need to be running the virtual machines, and then we need to be connecting to the domain controller using the Azure Bastion. So I'm going to select the DC virtual machine, and then I'm going to click connect via the Bastion. The username and the password are listed, so let's just go in and connect to the virtual machine. This will first trigger a pop-up blocker to well, prohibit me from getting into the environment, but here we are. We are now connecting towards the domain controller. Here it is. And inside the domain controller, we need to be starting the PowerShell ISE as an administrator. So what we want to do is I want to go and run the ISE. So let's do ISE, Windows, PowerShell, ISE, run as administrator. Yes. And then I will be allowed to do whatever I need to do in the lab. So one of the steps that we need to take is that inside the Active Directory domain service, we need to go and create a new organizational unit. We will do this with the first command. So once we have entered the command, we can see that it does not allow me to run the doesn't allow me to create this. Now, and sometimes in labs you have this you have these kind of things that these Active Directory components do not work. So another thing that we, oh, you know what, I have been running it from the wrong virtual machine. So here I am. I need to be inside the browser, obviously. Then I want to be in the Azure portal. Now I did it almost right, but not completely. So let's try again. Let's go to the domain controller. Now I want to sign in here via the Bastion again. Sometimes in these lab environments, it's sort of easy to use the wrong version of Windows. So what I get here, this is the domain controller environment, and that will get me a different start menu. So let's just go and make sure that I will just close the server manager. And here I want to run the PowerShell ISE as an administrator. So now I am running the right version of the PowerShell ISE on the right computer. Also here it shows me some history of things I've been doing earlier. So in here, let's just try to run this command again. Oh, and this obviously went wrong. So let's just make sure that I am not let's make sure that I have my cursor in the right place before pasting the text. Here we go. And now we can see that the command is being run in the right version of Windows. Maybe let me just quickly go and paste the text in my script editor to see if that is going all right. Like this, and then let's run this command. It's not okay. See, there might be some, see, as you can see, sometimes you see that in lab environments, it misses out that the dash here. So therefore that paste command is not working properly. So by fixing it, now you can see that we were able to get everything right. Sometimes, you know, the pasting messes a little bit up. So if that is the case, then please just make sure that your commands are all right. Here we can then connect an Azure account. That command just runs fine. So let's just be moving forward. By connecting an Azure account, I will have to sign in with the account I use to sign in into Azure. And the result will be that it will show the subscription that I am making my changes towards. So far, so good. So we have been showing the credentials, and then what we need to do is we need to get the user principal name of a user named user ad-user1. So let me just get the results of this. It's now connecting to the Azure environment. And here it shows that that user is actually ad-user1 at, and then my own Microsoft domain name. It says that we need to record this. So what I can do is just, right click here, click copy. And for later use, I can just paste it in the inline script editor in the ISE. So that is done. Now what we need to do is in Azure, we need to register a resource provider, which is about Microsoft Desktop Virtualization. So let's run this command. In order to run just a single line inside the set of lines, you can use this little button here. So I'm going to run that. You can see that this has been working. And now what we want to do, we want to navigate to the Azure portal because we need to be, well, we need to make sure that we have access to the environment. So within the remote desktop session of the domain controller here. So I need to open up an extra browser inside that virtual machine that I have connected to. In there, I want to be navigating to portal.azure.com. And then it wants me to go and navigate to the virtual network. And in that virtual network, I need to create a new subnet. So in here, let's search for VNet virtual networks. We created one virtual network in one of the previous labs. And here you will see that we can create a subnet. We do have a couple of subnets already, and we're going to add a new subnet here. We're going to name it HP subnet. We're going to use the IP range as mentioned. So let's just save that. And that finishes the first task in the exercise. Now, in this second task, we are going to deploy a host pool. So within the remote desktop session, within Microsoft Edge, we now want to go in and run the Azure Virtual Desktop. So AVD, that's what we search for. Here we can see Azure Virtual Desktop, and this is where we can then go in and create a new host pool. So what we need to do is we need to go in the host pools here, and then it says create. Now, the host pool that we are going to create is that we are going to create a new resource group. The new resource group is going to be named az14021RG. 21 represents the lab number, lab 0201. So this will create a new resource group. The host pool name is going to be entered. The location in our case still is going to be East US. We are not going to create a validation environment, which allows for new features to be deployed. This is going to be a desktop solution, and the host pool type is going to be pooled like this. We're going to choose breed first, and the maximum number of sessions is going to be 12. Then we are going to click next. Then we are being quoted into the, on the virtual machines tab, on the create a host pool blade, which is here, we are going to add virtual machines here. I think so. So create, then select in the tab, create a host pool, leave other settings. We are going to add virtual machines. Yes, this will open up a set of options. And here we are going to choose a couple of solutions. So first of all, the resource group is default to the same as the host pool. That's the default. Then the name prefix of the virtual machines has to be set up, but you have to search a little bit where this is going to be done. So if you check out the number of virtual machines, that's going to be 2. Then the size of the virtual machine is standard DS version 3. That's all right. The operating system disk type SSDs. We don't need to change the size here. That's going to be all right. The virtual network is going to be that first virtual network here, and the subnet is going to be the HP1 subnet. We don't need any public inbound ports. That's not what we need. Then if we need to go further up, there is one thing. Here it is. The resource group defaulted to the same as the host pool, and my virtual machines will get a little bit of a prefix. So that is going to be AZ140 for the course, 21 for the lab, P1 for pool 1. Then I want to just go and leave all the other defaults. Now when it comes to my availability options in the lab, it doesn't say anything here. So what I'm going to choose is no infrastructure requirement. We are going to use standard security for the environment, and the image is going to be Windows 11 Enterprise multi-session with the Microsoft 365 apps installed. Now, as you can see in my list, it doesn't show Windows 11, but it shows only Windows 10. For now, I'm going to be happy with that. So I'm going to choose Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session version 22H2 with the Microsoft 365 apps. So with that, we can just go and allow these settings to be accepted. Then a little bit further down, we have to join the domain to Active Directory. So that's what we want. The user responsible for the joining of the Active Directory is student@adatum.com, which comes with that default password. Let's just check if the pasting went all right. Do you want to specify a domain or organizational unit? Yes. The domain is going to be adatum.com. The organizational unit is going to be that new created organizational unit called WVD Infra. And the username of the local admin is going to be student. And the password is going to be that same password. Let's just check if the pasting is all right. We need to confirm the password. Just make sure that this is all right again. And then we don't need extra scripts. So then the next step is to go into the workspace environment. Do you want to register the desktop application group yet? No. Typically you would say yes, maybe, but in this lab we want to say no because we are going to take that application group as a separate step. So we're going to leave this. Then we can go in and click, we go to advanced. At this point, we are going to leave this empty, the diagnostic settings. So we will be going into the review and create view. This will at least validate if everything that we have set up is going to be all right. And if that is the case, we will then want to go and click create. This will start the creation of the host pool. Inside this host pool, we have chosen to create 2 virtual machines of a certain virtual machine size. The creation of the host pool may take about 10 minutes. So what we'll do here is we can basically follow what is going on. So for now, we are going to pause the video and then move forward when the creation of the host pool is finished. So here we are. The deployment has now completed. It took about 10 minutes. So let's move forward. So we have created now a environment, an Azure Virtual Desktop host pool named host pool 1. If you go into the environment here, we can see that there is an overview of the host pool. You can see that the host pool is pooled. Another thing we can do is we can check out some more information like an activity log to see if anything has happened to the host pool. And well, what we did is we created the solution. Then further down in the host pool, you will see that there is some other things that we have been created. For example, there is some RDP properties we configure, some other properties of the host pool itself. We can configure, we have some networking components for access, agent updates for the Azure Virtual Desktop agent in the host pool. And then there's also some other things like application groups, session hosts. And here we can see the session hosts. At this point, they are in the process of upgrading. So they are doing what they need to do to make sure that the agent and everything is in place. And we can do some monitoring components. So with this being fixed, let's move forward with the lab with task 3. So we see here within the remote desktop session on the domain controller, that is indeed where we are here, right? This is where we are. We then want to go and we want to go into Azure Virtual Desktop and we want to go into the host pools. So just we're going to click host pools like this. This is now showing the host pool. Then what we'll see is we want to select the host pool. And now, once we have selected it, we want to go and we want to select the list of session hosts, which are located here. So here we are with the host pool created. And in the next step, we are going to go into the session hosts of the node pool. And this is where we are going to add another session host in that host pool. So what we need to do here is we can see that most of the values have been grayed out because, well, the settings are inherited from the host pool that already existed. So we want to go into virtual machines, and here we are going to add another virtual machine. So here the prefix is here, the resource group is here. I'm going to go and choose for no infrastructure redundancy, standard security. That's important. The same, I'm going to use the same image. And because we were not able to choose for Windows 11 earlier, I'm going to choose the same one that we already used, which is Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session version 22 H2. Same virtual machine size. The number of virtual machines I want to add is 1. We are going to use standard SSD, standard disks. We are going to choose the exact same virtual network and the exact same subnet for the creation of the session host. Also here, the computer must be joined to Active Directory domain services, and I want to specify again the domain name and also the organizational unit like this. Then if we want to join the device into Active Directory domain services, we need a username and a password for that. Just want to check whether or not the password has been pasted correctly and the organizational unit has been pasted correctly. And if all of this is done, we can then move forward in the wizard, wait for the validation to finish, and then click create. And this will now go and add another virtual machine, another host into the host pool. So here we can see that the deployment is in progress, and we need to be waiting, which is going to take about 5 minutes before we can proceed. So I'm going to pause the video again and we will move forward when the deployment is. The deployment is close to be done. Here in another tab in my browser, I already am checking the virtual machines list. And as you can see here, in my host pool, I now have 3 hosts. We started with 2, we added another one. As you can see that the virtual machines naming is just incrementing the numbering just by 1 every time. So we start counting with 0, and then we add 1, we add another one. So anytime now, the deployment of the extra host should be done. Another way to check, by the way, is to go into the Azure Virtual Desktop section, then in your host pools, check out the host pool, and then inside the host pool, you can see that currently we have 2 machines. We can connect the 2 machines, so they're both here. So the new host in the host pool is being added by making sure that that host pool, the Azure Virtual Desktop agent, is being installed on the machine. So yeah, we are close to being done. We just have to be a little bit more patient in order to get the extra host added. Now, in the next task in this lab, we are going to configure some Azure Virtual Desktop application groups. Now, what you'll notice is that if we check out the Azure Virtual Desktop environment, then here we can see next to host pools, we can also check out application groups. And currently, we already have something called the auto-generated host application group for full desktop. So here we can see the az140 22hp1, which is host pool 1. That is the desktop application group, a DAG. This is allowing users, once assigned to the application group, full access to a full desktop. So, for example, if I want to make use of this, I can open up the desktop application group. We get some information about the application group itself. If we check out the properties, we just get to see some information. However, if we want to, we can change the friendly name, the default desktop group, for example. We can change this a little bit. However, in the what we need to go is we want to be in the assignments part. And this is where we can add users to be assigned to the application group. And that means that if a user is indeed connecting to the Azure Virtual Desktop service, it can then go in and, well, use this default or the desktop application group, and therefore it will be able to connect to the session hosts in the host pool that this desktop application group has been based upon. So in this example, it says that we need to select some users. So we need to click select, and then it wants us to select some users here. And what we need to do is I'm gonna go and I'm gonna select AD user 1 here. And now by doing this, we are indeed assigning a user to that group. So that is something we could do. So in the lab instruction, it's a little bit written down weirdly. So in the assignment blades, it says click add, right? So then you can see on the select Microsoft Entra users or groups, select az140 pooled and then click select. So basically what it wants us to do, it wants us to select this group here, right? That's the az140 pooled group. Click select. So that is the group that I'm assigning. So indeed, I would not have to have that single user assigned into the assignment here. So that group is now going to be the one. And once we are done, we have now assigned it. So maybe I need to refresh. So this is supposed to be that result. Now, another thing is that we can also go to application groups here. So I want to go back into the application groups, and now they want us to create a new one. Now, if we create a new application group, we can only use the remote app group because every host pool can only have one desktop-based application group. At this point, I can still select either one of them. However, if I'm going to make my selections here in the top part, you will notice that my options will change a little bit. So I'm going to create one, and here on the basics tab, we are going to create a new application group. We're going to create it in the resource group 21. Then the host pool is the only host pool that we have. And here we can see once assigning the host pool, we do not have the option for desktop anymore. The location is being placed and the application group name is going to be named the az140 21hp1 Office 365. And then it's remote, or it's not a DAG, but a RAG for remote app application group. Then in the next step, we are going to select the applications that are going to be part of the application group. So I'm going to add some applications, and they want us to go and get some info from the start menu. Here, I am now selecting components from the start menu. I will be selecting Word from the start menu. And this, in order to do this, we actually have to have our at least one virtual machine, one session host in the host pool must be running. So in this case, I can now go in and we can also select an icon for the for the solution here, but it's just using the default settings. So I'm gonna leave that. And then in review and add, we click add. Now, just like this, not only do we want to create a solution for Word, but we also want to add Excel and PowerPoint. So I'm going to add 2 more applications in the exact same way. I'm going to select Excel and we are going to enter Microsoft Excel as the description. Click add, and I'm going to fast forward a little bit because here I also want to go and select PowerPoint. The description is going to be Microsoft PowerPoint. Review and add. Click add. So now I have added 3 applications. Now I can go into assignments. And then I am going to add Microsoft Entra users or groups. Again, we're going to do the same assignments. And now we need to select a group called Microsoft Entra or the az140 VVD remote app group here. So I'm going to click select. That is now being added into this. Then I'm going to click workspace. And here we can choose to either register or not register the application group to the workspace. So I'm going to leave this to no. We are going to take this action at a later stage. I'm going to go into advanced, no monitoring for now, no tagging for now. And then I will be at the review and create section. And once we are here, we are going to click create. This is what we need to do to create a new application group. Now, the creation of the application group doesn't take too much time. So once this is done, we will be moving back to the environment where we can select the complete list of application groups. And now, here we created this. So now let's get back to my Azure Virtual Desktop environment, my application groups. We now have 2 application groups. And I want to create yet another one with the purpose of allowing users access to certain utilities. So here the application group name is going to be something with utilities here. I do have to do a couple of things like what is the resource group, what is the host pool, and then next in applications, I'm going to select an application, not from the start menu, but from a path. So here I'm going to choose the file path. The application path is here. The application, that is the application name, is going to be command prompt. Then you can see the description is also going to be the Windows command prompt. Now here it also wants some kind of an application identifier here. But it's not being named here in the table. So we have a display name. The application name is not being shown, but that is basically what the identifier is going to be. So it's kind of a weird way to, well, say what the application name is going to be. In this case, it's going to be the identifier, is going to be the command prompt. The icon path is something we also want to assign, which is that same location. Icon index is here. And then we are going to click next and add. So we added the command line, just one in this example. Then next in assignments, in this case, we also want to allow not only the remote app group, but also the Windows Virtual Desktop admins group in the assignment. So I'm going to go in, add 2 of these. Here we have the remote app and we have the remote admins like this. Click select. Both of them now have been selected. Go to workspace. Here it says the value is going to be no. Apparently we are going to do this later. And then we are going to click next, next, and review and create. And this allows us to create the new application group for the host pool that we created. So as you can see, the host pool is the source of where application groups could be based upon. And there's one step missing, and that is that we need to make sure that the application groups are now also part of a workspace, because the workspace is the link between your Azure Virtual Desktop environment and the Entra ID that the user in the end is going to sign into. So with this, we now have created a couple of application groups, all based on a certain host pool. As you can see here, it's listed, but there is no workspace mentioned yet. Therefore, we want to go into the next part where we are going to create a workspace. So here I want to create a new workspace. I'm going to choose the resource group, the workspace name. The friendly name of the workspace is going to be the exact same thing. The location is US is what I wanted. Then what I can do is next I want to register some application groups. And then we're going to add those. And it wants us to register all the application groups. So I'm going to click plus for the desktop application group, plus for the office application group, and plus for the utilities application group. And now I'm going to click select. Now here I can then go into advanced tags and review and create. And this allows me to create the workspace. And just like that, we have created the workspace. So here it is. It is now done. We have done the assignments. So in the next part of this environment, we are going to install the remote desktop client on a Windows 10 computer. So we've done everything now, but for the next lab, we need to be connecting to the client virtual machine that we also created in one of the previous labs. So we're going into the az140 CLVM11. We now want to connect to this machine via the Bastion. However, this is a Windows 10 machine running in Azure. And if you want to have like the full access, you can not just go in and dive into the machine. So what we need to do is when we have the machine selected, it wants us to go into the settings of the VM, and then we want to select under operations, we want to select run command. And here we want to run the command for the enable remote PS, remote PowerShell. So I'm going to run this. And this takes about a minute. And this will now connect to the VM from the Azure platform, and it will enable a component. Now, then we need to go in and dive into the remote desktop session from the domain controller, because it wants us to invoke a command remotely, right? So here, what it's going to do on the az140 CL. Whoops. Oh yeah, Win service started. We do get some kind of an error message. However, it says that something is, well, not super right. Oh, the firewall exception will not work since one of the network connection types of machine is set to public. Ah, see, that is important. So maybe one of the things that I need to do, because in the end, what the lab wants us to do, is the lab wants us to sign in into that client as an existing user, like a user in the Active Directory domain server. So it's pretending we are now making it look like we are an actual user connecting to an actual machine. However, everything runs in Azure. That's what this command is about. So one of the things that we can do is just to be sure, I will now go and connect to this machine here. And for one time, I am going to sign in, not with student@az140.com, but I want to sign in with student, which is the admin account. Then I'm going to use the password. So first, I am going to sign into the virtual machine, the client VM, as like a local admin. However, later it wants us to sign in with let's say an other kind of user object. It's not a local admin, but a domain-based user. So let's just first sign in, and then I want to change the. I want to make sure that I'm going to change the firewall setting on the client to domain. So no longer are we connecting as no longer public, but now it's going to be the domain profile for the firewall. So I'm going to accept some defaults. First time signing in into Windows, right? So here we are. Now I want to go up and open up the firewall settings. So let's just let's go into the firewall. Windows Defender firewall with advanced security. And now I want the properties, and I am going to say that this is, you know what, for now, let's just select public off, firewall state, public on. So inbound connections, you know what, because actually, I wanted to, let's see if we can find that setting. Oh man, I am not so good with that Windows thing. So open up the firewall. Here it says domain network is not connected. Private network is connected, right? So this is the wrong. This is where it's wrong. So can I change that? You know what? For now, just to be certain, I just don't want to. I don't want to be focusing on this client for now. That's why I quickly want to just go and say, hey, let's switch off this firewall. This virtual machine is not directly accessible from the internet anyway. So I'm going to go and change the setting. Firewall is off. So with that, we should not have any problems. So for now, I want to go in and I want to disconnect. So we have disconnected. Perfect. So next, it wants me to connect to the domain controller again, right? This is, so it wanted me to connect to the domain controller again here in step 4. Now let's open up the ISE, and then it wanted me to go and run. Uh-oh, I don't want my, so I want to get this pasted in, because it's now going to create, basically what it's going to do, it is going to make part of the remote desktop group. We are going to make that, well, the domain admin. So now I'm gonna go and on that client, my the group remote desktop users is now being populated with people in the Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows Virtual Desktop, or the Windows Virtual Desktop users group. The result is that now from that client virtual machine that we have, we should now be able to sign in into that client using a normal or using a user account. So here we are now going to sign in as student at adatum.com. And now this should work. So that will basically make the sign-in authenticate with the Active Directory domain controller, domain services domain controller. So that is what is happening here. So we'll just have to wait for the user to successfully sign in. And then what happens is the next step is that we can have a user connect into that client. So we need to go in and follow a link to download the remote desktop client. And then what we want to do is we want to have that user start using the Azure Virtual Desktop Services. So here we are in the browser. I'm gonna oh, this is quite annoying. It's not in the lab guide, but what you need to do if you start Edge for the first time, you click start without your data, confirm and continue without the data, and then start browsing. So it's like 4 buttons that you need to click in order to start using the browser here in Edge. So here we are. So I want to be in the right location, and here we can see it straight downloads the remote desktop client. So I want to open the file for installing the remote desktop client like this. And now we want to click next and agree and next, and I'm gonna install this for all users on the machine and then click install. So here we are. The solution now has been installed. So what I will do here, so we have installed the remote desktop client. In my case, I'm just gonna go and put it in the taskbar here. That speeds up the process. And just like that, we now have that connection available. Here I want to go in and so the next step is that we want to go and we need to go in and dive into that environment. So we need to go in and use the connection and then see what we can do. So that is going to be next. In this demonstration, we are going to connect with the Windows desktop client. So in order to do so, we need to be in a virtual machine or in a computer that has the remote desktop client installed. Now, what we want to do here is that we want to subscribe either with a user that is going to be signing in or with a URL. So here we can, for example, paste in a workspace URL. So like this, we could go in, or we just go and enter the right URL. For example, we could go in and say, hey, we have this here, like rdweb.vvd.microsoft.com/api/feed discovery. If I click next, right, if I want to use that URL, then it brings me to wherever Azure is. So in this case, we need to be signing in as one of the users that we have in our environment to go into the environment. So in order to do so, I want to be in the entra.microsoft.com, and that will get me a list of users that we have in our organization. So the user that I want to be signing in is my Active Directory user 1. Here, I'm gonna go in and paste the user in. I would love to be able to paste that user in. Otherwise, I will just have to enter the right information. So here we are. The A20, it's AD user 1 at the A2312 az140 outlook.onmicrosoft.com. Then the user has to enter the password. And once successfully signing in, it will show whatever we have available for the user. And in this example, we could, for example, allow this user to open up a full desktop by double-clicking the desktop. This will now start the connection between the user. Because we did not enable single sign-on for the organization, we will just have to enter the user's password one more time to sign in into the machine. And obviously, we have to do this with, and this is going to be AD user 1 at, actually, it's going to be ADA 2312. It has to be that user. So yes, this should be all right. I just have to enter the password better. Like this. And here we are connecting into the remote desktop session host that is part of the host pool that we created as part of the Azure Virtual Desktop environment. Now, one of the things that we might want to check is what machine did we now connect to? So this is the host pool based session host. In here we have all kinds of office related applications, because when we created the host pool, we've chosen an environment, an image that contained these applications. But for now, maybe we could run a command line. And if we would now run the command hostname, we can see that we have been connected to the first machine inside the host pool. Now, if I would check the same environment from the host pool perspective, then what we can see is we, for example, can check out the host pool here. And in the host pool, we have the session hosts. And here we can see that we now have one total session in this example at the first machine inside the host pool. And this is how we can connect to Azure Virtual Desktop using the Windows Desktop client. So here we saw in that little demo that we would be able to connect to the complete desktop, as you can see. Now another thing that we might want to test is, for example, just a command prompt. So from my client, let's just kill the full connection for the full desktop here. Now let's just double click the command prompt here. It's now still, it wants me to sign in. So let me just go in and enter the password here. In the back, you can see that it's actually doing a full connection before just showing only the command prompt as a remote app. Also here, I could run the hostname command, and actually it shows that we are connected to one of the session hosts inside the host pool here. So at command prompt, we could go in and do log off, which will log the user off, which is useful when we want to dive and when we want to exit the session. Then We can run the desktop. Well, we did that, so let's just go in and run the full desktop. Again, you know what? Maybe I want to go in here now and make sure that my user is remembered. So this will create the full desktop again. Here they also want us to run the cmd command again. Run the host name command. Oh, typo. The host name command, and it will show that exact same name. So that is what it is. Once you're done with the lab, please make sure to stop all the virtual machines, because that will, in that case, you will stop paying for the use of it. So I'm just gonna leave all the connections from everything that we created in Azure Portal in virtual machines. I'm just gonna go in and select all of the virtual machines and click stop. This will stop all the virtual machines. It will deallocate all the virtual machines. Just like that, we are now stopping for the payment. And well, this ends the lab 2.1 or 0201, where we have been deploying a session host as part of host pools and application groups using the Azure portal. So hopefully you have found this video useful if you are running the az140 course. If you find this useful, then please well, subscribe to the channel to be updated if you want to check out some more of these videos on Azure Virtual Desktop and many more things. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time, and hopefully I will see you in another video here on my channel. Thank you. Goodbye.